There is something in writing, something so entrenched in storytelling, it cannot go away. It belongs in all character types and helps define them. What I'm talking about here is archetypes. To be clear, archetype simply means the original pattern or model of which all things of the same type are representations or copies. To give some examples here, Gandalf would be the mentor archetype, John Watson, the everyman, Darth Vader, the villain, and so forth. We know these characters intimately and are familiar with them. No matter what story we've ever encountered, some archetype or variation of will appear in them. But why is this relevant? Why am I bringing this up? Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you about the Bloody Baron, Philip Stringer. While playing The Witcher 3, I met and began to see and learn about this man. I saw his emotions, parts of his past, and ultimately how they affected him and are still doing so. I began to truly think of this character as a real person. I can say in all honesty, I hate the man, simply for what he's done in his backstory and for what he does in the story proper, but I never felt hate for having to deal with him. Every time I spoke with him, I didn't get annoyed about the drivel and nonsense he was going to spout or merely drone on and on about some irrelevant plot idiocy. Instead, I approached him with interest and seeing deeper into the character. I bring this up because if you search hating a character on YouTube, you will find a huge list of top 10 videos on the most hated characters based on so many of people's opinions and choices. Some are simply the love to hate videos, others the most hated X's and Y's, and some, yes, make a lot of sense and I agree with them. But they all seem to lack a certain point. The difference between hating a character and hating the character. For Stringer, he is in no way redeemable, but what he is understandable. You understand what he is, you understand why he is like this, you understand how he got here, who he is, the works. And for all of this, I hate the man, but I love the character. All of his nuances, all of his quirks and personalities, emotions and thoughts, he doesn't feel like just another character. He lacks what so many other characters across all mediums lack: tangibility, feeling real. At the same time, we've seen the opposite. Characters in movies, video games, and books where they are just the bane of our enjoyment. They are annoying, bland, idiotic, or overall useless to the story, leading us to question why they're even in the story whatsoever. Let's take another example of this from a video game / graphic novel, Major Minor. I won't go into the specifics of the game other than it's pretty abysmal, but during its run we met one character by the name of Rocker, a guitar player with a band set to tour across the world. Rocker's character is one who loves Japanese mythology, as the tour starts in Japan, and how he tells just everyone how much there is in long monologues of dialogue. Eventually, Rocker is murdered by a secondary antagonist, which is to serve as the true beginning of the game's main subplot, creating a lot of turmoil within the group. However, this is not the end for Rocker, as he does briefly come back, and if the protagonist's bond with him is strong enough, he will tell you his entire life story. I cannot deny hating this character's guts. He went on and on about useless and idiotic stuff which served no purpose to the plot and contributed to making his character development one which I cringe at thinking about even now. When his backstory was given, it was in the form of seemingly never-ending monoliths of text, which tried to bring to life a character which had little to no impact on the story other than to die. Little to no character, generic backstory, and useless to the overall story save for them to die and ultimately something we've really seen before. This is the ultimate failure of Rocker. He's cookie cutter in a way which has been implemented before countless other times, made worse by the fact its implementation is, well, god-awful. His whole archetype is not used well. But what archetype does Rocker fall into? Based on his almost never-ending dialogue and his passion for helping his companions, I think it's safe to say we can place him within the realm of the storyteller and the idealist. The storyteller for telling the stories and mythos of Japan, the idealist for constantly wanting to see the good in people and have them reach their true potential. Let's look then at how these archetypes in Rocker's character are presented to us. He is first introduced educating the audience to the history of Japan. After some lengthy dialogue, he is later introduced to the protagonist, giving us more information on Japanese customs, with only the slightest mention about his character and history. Later again, some small peek into his past and what drives him before he is killed off. Finally, when Rocker returns, he gives his entire life story with no questions are asked before permanently leaving the rest of the game. It's here we begin to see a problem. Little to none of Rocker's backstory is presented to give us any inkling of interest in his character, leaving his death as barely a footnote in the story. And when we do get to know more, it's only after a monolith of exposition. Little really has changed in our eyes to how he's become the man he is. More still, nothing has really jumped out to grab or spark our interest in him. No previous hints, no mystery, no foreshadowing, nothing. He essentially remains the same as when we first met him, his backstory not changing our opinion. Then we have the Bloody Baron. He is the fool, the drunk, the grotesque, at times the brawler with a heart of gold, the old soldier, and throughout his story, his own antagonist. None of which I can expand upon without giving major spoilers, but as we move forward in the game with him, we see something different from Rocker. The archetypes play off each other to his misfortune. He is feared and despised by his men, enemies, and family. The lattermost he loves and cherishes deeply. He has seen war and death, plunging him into alcohol and fits of rage he thinks after he awakens from, he can still be loved and respected. All of these alienate him and push him farther away from the happiness he truly wants. This is what truly separates the Baron from Rocker, not having multiple archetypes, but having those archetypes play off one another. This is what archetypes, like stories, have had to do in order to stay interesting. They've had to evolve. For example, Gandalf is a product of his times. He had to be the mentor and nothing more. 20 or 40 years later, however, just having one archetype wasn't a good enough character. Then it had to be multiple archetypes, multiple facets of personalities, making a more complicated portrait of a character, at times contradicting each other to make a character real. Homer Simpson then is the fool, the sociopath, the klutz, and at times the hero. This then made the character interesting. Now though, once again, to make a character real, make them good, having multiple archetypes is not enough. These archetypes must play off another. They must actively conflict with one another, springboard off each other, support each other. This is done through the Baron's implementation in the game. We are never told the full story of his person, as the Baron lies to us repeatedly. He withholds information from us at our and his cost. When we are told, we look deeper and deeper into him, always with the hint there's a deeper story to be told there. As we learn, we see how these archetypes are made manifest by his actions which plague him. It's through these small glimpses of dialogue we are able to paint a picture of a man deeply troubled by his past actions. They are reflected in what he does in the story proper and accurately explains why he commits them, building the story of a broken family and even more broken and pained person. This web of actions, through revealing more and more about him in small windows into his psyche, are mirrored in real life. We never truly know a person when we first meet, and even more so rarely enjoy getting to know them through massive monologues like we were forced to by Rocker. This is not to say Rocker cannot be an interesting one, far from it. If you actually listen to the dialogue, read through his story, he can actually be someone who can be fully fleshed out, is interesting in their own right, and can have an impact on both the story and the viewer. The issue lies then in the implementation of the character in the story. Yes, I did talk a lot about Rocker earlier, a lot of trash. But after slogging through the game with its soul-crushing amount of exposition, it's really hard to care or relate to him. We weren't teased about his story, we weren't given any mystery behind it, we were forced to endure it. While we had no choice to deal with either character, with Rocker it was thrown at us all at once. All his past, all his emotions, all the attempts to get us to care about him were just thrown in one big pile. With the Baron, whenever we encountered him, we saw a different piece each time, allowing us to solve a puzzle from different corners. We saw each aspect of each archetype he had, slowly and painfully for him. Through this, we built not a character, but a man who could be as real as you or me. Flawed, pained, full of highs and lows, and who had just reached rock bottom after all of his failures caught up with him. We see a web of archetypes linked together by a believable backstory, which played off each other in different ways, and when we saw through the small windows of dialogue telling us half-truths and potential lies. This implementation, this kind of story is what separates Rocker from the Baron, stringing together a mystery and a web of story connecting the types of person the Baron is, and within this web again, we saw the picture of the character we hate, not just a character we hate. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something today, and if not, just maybe had a couple ideas. If you like this video and want to see more like it, hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And if you do have any thoughts on the topic, or think I'm just a plain idiot, leave a comment as well. And remember, drink coffee, gain knowledge. I'll see you next time.